You're listening to Northwoods Church Matters, a podcast of Northwoods Church in Evansville, Indiana, where we discuss why the local church matters and things that matter to the local church. I'm your host, Matt Higgins. Welcome back to the Northwoods Church Matters podcast. We are going to talk about the story of Bobby Pell today.
Prepare to be disappointed.
It was a dark and stormy night.
I'm just saying, this is not going to go well.
Oh, I think it's going to be awesome. And, you know, people are going to learn lots of good things about Pastor Bobby. I think we've had a good experience learning from our staff about their stories. So, Bobby, could you tell us, where did you grow up? And I think I already know the answer to this question.
Where did I grow up, Matt?
Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Sort of. I grew up in the northwest Georgia area, right across the state line from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I normally tell people Chattanooga because no one knows where Rossville, Georgia and Ringgold, Georgia is. Rossville, Georgia is where I was at till I was like 6. And then Ringgold, Georgia, from then on, all of that's sort of that tri-state area.
Mm-hmm. Did you come out of the womb saying Roll Tide?
No, but I learned it early.
First words were roll. Second word, tide. So what do you remember from your childhood?
I remember dancing. We had a dance room.
You had a dance room in your house?
Now, that's an interesting question. I mean, you have to remember, I grew up in, probably I was 6 or 7. My parents didn't go to church. First house we lived in, we had a dance room that we danced, disco type stuff. And my sisters, who were, 9? My youngest is 9 years older than me. And so 9, 11, 13 years older than me approximately. They danced a lot.
So was there live music or was it like you put on the records?
Put on the records, the LPs.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember that. Behind our house was a train tracks, literally right behind the backyard.
So you literally lived on the other side of the tracks?
I literally lived on the other side of the tracks. And then we moved when I was first grade, second grade. Second grade, this is a funny story. I got kicked out of public school, sort of. So that was the period of time that family started going to church. And I walked up to a kid who had a KISS t-shirt on. And I said to him, "You're going to hell," because he had a KISS t-shirt on. And the kid started crying, went to the teacher. The teacher told the principal. I went to the principal's office. They called my mom in. My mom figured out I needed to go to a Christian school. So,
well, nobody's wearing a KISS t-shirt in Christian school.
That's true.
So what was it like growing up the youngest of 3 sisters?
We watched a lot of General Hospital and All My Children. There was
not Disney movies.
Not a lot of Disney movies. I don't remember Donna, the oldest. I don't remember her at home. And then Darlene left also pretty early. Debbie, my youngest sister, I remember growing up with her. I mean, my sisters very much mothered me along with my mom. And it was very much a woman-dominated house. I mean, and so we really did watch a lot of soap operas. My generation remember the Days of Our Lives, All My Children, General Hospital, Luke and Laura.
You had to watch the stories every day.
Oh, baby. This was a part of life.
And this may be why you like Hallmark so much.
I'm just telling you.
Yeah, just deep down. So what was your first experience with church since, you remember that transition from being a lost family to a church-going family?
I tell the story of there were 2 guys, both named Ken Nolan, Ken Phillips, sort of dogged my dad into going to church. And they ended up going to a revival service that was a Sunday through Sunday revival service that Bill Stafford did. Bill Stafford was actually did a cameo appearance in one of the Kendrick Brothers movies. And my mom and dad went and their lives changed. They never stopped going to church. I don't remember that revival service. I do remember starting to go to church, and we always went early, sung in the youth choir. I remember that vividly. I remember singing in children's choir and a youth choir and in the adult choir. And I remember going to Sunday school. I remember Vacation Bible School being a huge deal in our life. I remember that life to a great degree revolved around church. And we went from no church to everything was church. That was very different. Everything changed.
Mm-hmm. So tell us your story about how you came into a relationship with Jesus. When was that, and what did that look like?
First of all, I would say at the age of 6, I made a profession of faith. It was Vacation Bible School. Scott Nolan, one of my best friends. Our Vacation Bible schools were different. We pretty much designed our own material. And at the end of Vacation Bible School, everybody came into the room together, and the youth would be working while VBS is going on a skit that would be a gospel presentation. And everybody else would come in, see the skit that had been put together that night. At the conclusion of that, there would be an invitation to receive the gospel. Well, there was a night when I was 6 years old, Scott Nolan went forward during the invitation after the skit. I saw him having a lot of attention. I went forward. I made a profession of faith. That was not true. That was 100% driven by attention somebody else was receiving. But I think that a lot of people, including my mom and dad, I got baptized. A lot of people believed I was saved. On a Sunday night, I do know the date, in February the 10th of 1982. I was 11 and a half. We went to church. My parents' strategy to keep me quiet in church was to give me candy. We stopped at Sullivan's grocery store, mom and pop grocery store, went in to pick up some candy on a Sunday night. On also up by the cash register was a Chick track.
That's an age check.
That is an age check. That's right. For those of you who don't know, it's a cartooned tract. Not all of them have great theology, but I picked it up, literally thought to myself, when the service gets boring, I'll read this. I was sitting on the front row. Choir was singing. I pulled out the tract. Front of the tract says, "Hi there." And the story was about a guy who was a construction worker who went to church on Sunday, went to his construction job site, cussed like a sailor, lived like someone who was not a Christian, but everyone in church on Sunday believed he was. There was a construction accident, and then it showed him at the end of the track in hell. And I thought to myself, just as a kid, everyone in this room thinks I'm a Christian, but if there was an accident, where would I go? And the Lord really convicted me. When my dad came out of the choir loft, I knew I was going to talk to him, and for whatever reason, he went back into the Sunday school rooms, and I just got up out of my seat and went looking for him. And I found my dad, and he had the old traditional, he was wearing a coat and tie. I remember grabbing his coat and pulling on it and said, "Dad, I need to get saved." And he took me to the altar. We had an altar, and it was during the time that the traditional shaking hands period of time, my dad prayed with me to receive Jesus. That was the story of me coming to know Christ.
Awesome.
And I go back to that. I mean, you know, the Bible says, examine yourselves. I don't think people think about this for us as pastors, but many times in our lives, even as pastors, we do not act saved. And I have to examine myself and say, okay, am I really a follower of Jesus? And did Jesus really save me? That event was real. And I really did give Jesus my life. I hang on to that.
Yeah. And I think your story and some of our other staff story is important to hear. Rachel has a similar moment where you give your life to Christ as a child, and then later on you realize, maybe I didn't know what I was doing, and then you give your life later to Jesus. And I know a lot of parents struggle with that, with thinking, well, they're placing their confidence in something that happened in childhood. How would you encourage a family where a child comes to them and says, I don't think that what I did as a child was legit. I need to get saved again.
I'll quickly tell you what not to do. I was a youth leader, youth pastor. I was a really bad youth pastor, but I had a teenager came to know Christ, went to tell the parents with the teenager, and the parents said, "No, you did not come to know Christ. That happened when you were a kid." That's an awful answer from a parent.
Yeah.
Because everything that had just happened, it was like the deflating of a balloon. No one knows anyone's heart. If you have a child, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they come to know Christ, celebrate that. And if that same child comes to know Christ at 10, 11, 12, 13, celebrate that.
Yeah.
And if they come to know Christ at 21, 22, 23, 24, celebrate that.
Yeah.
Our responsibility is let's celebrate. Look, I recognize you only get saved once. And the question then will become, which time was it? Who cares?
Right.
Let's just be grateful that they come to know Jesus. that they're in a relationship with Christ and hopefully growing in Christ. That's the goal. And so I just would encourage every parent to don't fret over the age. If you're going to fret, which is sin, but if you were going to do that, do it over, do they know Jesus? That'd be my 2 cents.
Yeah, there's a great Jason Gray song that's the refrain of the song is, I'm going to give you my life, Lord, as many times as it takes.
Yeah, that's great.
Which I think the Christian life is not just one moment of that. There's a continual
That's right.
reaffirming and re-giving of our life.
Yeah, and it does go back to, Paul saying, examine yourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, he wouldn't be saying that except that there does come a point in time in a lot of our lives where we thought we were, we might not be, so become. And so if you think you are, and then you examine yourselves and you say, I'm not sure I am, become. Put your faith in Christ. That's always an option in anyone's life. I'm 51. Whatever your age is, if you don't know, come to know.
Yeah. So what were you like as a teenager?
I was a jock. I played a lot of basketball, pretty popular in school because of that. I was a little different in the sense of I started preaching young. I was like a freshman in high school. I would not say that that was my call into ministry, but I went to a Christian school that we were 4 days a week. We were Tuesday through Friday, 8 to 4. And 2 of those days a week, we had chapel. Commonly, I would speak one of those days.
Wow.
Out of 52 Sundays, my sophomore, junior, and senior year, I would not be at my church somewhere between 10 to 20 Sundays a year. I would be in another church preaching.
Wow.
I think one of the things that helped me in preaching was that I had done a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know this. I mean, the more you do it, the better you get.
Exactly. Yeah. Even from the perspective of just standing up in front of people and speaking. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so by the time that I got to homiletics class, a lot of those guys, this was one of the first times they had done that. That was not my case.
Mm-hmm.
I still learned a lot in homiletics.
So did they rotate preachers in your school, or was it just you?
Some of the teachers were preachers, but they were like, I don't want to do that. I mean, I'm busy enough. I ate it up because for me, I knew, even at a young age, I knew this is helpful for me. I don't know that it's helpful for everybody listening, but it was helpful for me to do it. And so I was saying yes to any opportunity I could get.
Yeah. I mean, there's the practical experience of getting to preach and then the skill set that's learned by that too. But I think what people don't understand sometimes too is preaching helps you learn the Bible.
Yes.
Because it forces you to study and memorize and it really is a driving factor in how much you learn.
Well, think of, for those listening who teach scripture, teach a children's class, you teach Awana, you teach Sunday school, or you've taught a small group. The preparation of those things has a major impact on you.
Yeah.
That's what was happening in me.
There's something to be said about, some people aren't growing in their faith because they're not teaching.
That's right.
So what did your call to ministry look like? I know you were preaching early, but you said you weren't necessarily called then.
So Mr. Weidenbender was my Bible teacher. Very good man. I was very close to him. And he came to me once, and I went to a Christian school, and he said, hey, Bobby, I have this piece of paper. Tennessee Association of Christian Schools are putting together, they have an academic and Bible competition. One of them is on preaching. It's a 10 to 15 minute sermon. I want you to do it. I'm signing you up. Out of respect for him, I did it. It's Chattanooga location. There were 2 people that entered expository sermon. Mine was on Hebrews 12, verse 2. I said everything I knew about that verse in 7 minutes. There were only 2 people who entered, so I just went back to Unity Christian School and said I took second place. Top 2 go to state. Well, I knew I was going to the state competition because there were only 2 people who entered. When the results came out, I had taken first. I listened to the other guy. He did a great job. Steve Minton, still remember his name. I ended up winning the state and ended up going to nationals at Bob Jones University. I did that my freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. By the time I got to my sophomore year, I still didn't feel like I was called in the ministry. I was just doing this preaching thing. I was at our church. I was being discipled by a guy named Paul Rowden, who was in his 70s. And Lee Robertson was speaking. He was the president of Tennessee Temple University, pastor at Highland Park Baptist Church. He was preaching. I don't even remember what it was on. But when the service was over, my mom looked at me and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I am messed up." And she said, "Why don't you talk to Paul?" So Paul and I, he's in his 70s. I'm 16. We're sitting on the back row. They're turning the lights off. You know how people are turning the lights off in the sanctuary?
We want to go home.
They're turning the lights off, and he said, "So what's wrong with you?" And I said, "Brother Paul, God can't." He said, "Stop. I don't know what you're about to say, but yes, he can." I said, "Okay." I said, "I was going to say, God can't be calling me into ministry, could he?" He said, "Take the can't and turn it into can." And that crystallized in my mind. I mean, it just crystallized. He could be. And he said, "Just take the night and pray about that and think through that." And that night, I really believe that God flipped a switch, that he was using the whole preaching competition thing. And he had shown me this could be the direction of my life. I know that that's really weird that God would use that, but he did. Yeah, I mean, it ended up being related to that. But there was a night that I still can go back to and say, this happened.
You've told this great story, and I feel like I've got a shallow question afterwards, which, what did you get for winning a preaching competition? Is there a trophy? Is there a tie? A Bible? I mean, what do you get?
I got a plaque. I got a plaque.
Do you still have those?
All of the trophies and plaques are gone. Yeah, I kept them for years, but they're all gone.
Yeah.
They're all gone. Won the state competition for some years. Never did any good in the national competition till my senior year. My senior year, I think I took third in the national competition. But I never did any good there. So if you know anything about Bob Jones University, though, it is an unusual place.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, that's a podcast for another time.
That's exactly right. That is an unusual place. I'm just going to say.
So how did you meet Amy?
At church. I was in the choir loft sitting next to Mike Phillips. I remember pastor said, "It's good to have Amy Maston here today from Indiana." Mike said to me, "There you go." And I said, "I'm already on it." And the next day was Labor Day. I threw a party at my house just to be able to invite her.
Wow.
I think that night was Sunday night. All the singles, we already organized all singles in our church. We played volleyball on Sunday night. So I made sure I invited her to that, invited her to my house the next day. And then I think that week we went on a lunch date. I did landscaping at Provident Insurance Company, the home office. That was how we met.
Awesome. How did you struggle after becoming a Christian?
I'd say in multiple ways. One is just sin. You know,
it's still there.
You know, just doing things you shouldn't do, having attitudes I shouldn't have. I think things people don't think you struggle with.
Absolutely.
And I think sin's real. And I think people don't understand, even as a pastor, that there are days, weeks, months, and even years as pastors that our spiritual life is not always as it ought to be.
Yeah.
And then I would say the other thing is people have certain expectations of you that I've struggled with. Because when you combine those two things, I'm already a sinner. I'm already struggling with sin. And then when you add on top of that what people think that you should be, there's nothing fun about that.
No, it's not. People will see pastors fall from grace, and there's hidden sin or things like that. And people will say, I can't believe somebody so holy has stuff like that going on in his life. And I just want to say, well, of course they do. And
right.
You know, we all do. We all have struggles that we face. It just because you're called into ministry doesn't mean you're called to perfection.
Right.
Or your life is going to be perfect.
Right. One of the things that I try to do in sermons here is communicate that I'm like everyone else. People may or may not see that. People may or may not agree with that. It's real. Our feet are made of clay.
Yeah.
And I think that that's legitimate.
Yeah. Could you talk about your head injury?
In 1997, I had an event on a Christmas Eve where I started shaking, turned into a few months later where I would black out. Then it turned into a few months later where I would black out, come to, not be able to move the left side of my body. Went to see multiple neurologists to try to figure stuff out. We ended up going to Mayo to try to find out what was going on. One of the things that they said after some neuropsychological testing was that I had been hit in the head. And they said, when did that happen? I told them, I said, in 1988, which was 9 years previous to any neurological issues, I was pitching softball. Ball came back down the middle, hit me right smack dab between the eyes, broke my nose. The gap between the two bones on the nose was about a half an inch. It was a major break. They had to go in and do surgery to push the bones back in together. What they found out in the neuropsychological study was I don't follow pronouns. And whenever we're in conversation, you know, it's not uncommon for me to say to you, who are you? Who's they? You know, I think I did that yesterday in a text that you had
text
said.
that I sent.
Who's the them?
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure it would have been evident to everyone else, but it just wasn't to me. And that's my world.
Yeah.
I had developed seizures. And from that head injury, a lot of my life was, while pastoring a growing church, was I'd have 3 or 4 days a week, maybe more than that, where I would be at home, black out, come to, and not be able to move the left side of my body for a couple of hours.
Wow.
Amy and Garrett and Ryan, but a lot of it was on Amy, really had to deal with that. Those were hard days. I've been on medicine for seizures. We learned what was going on in 2000. It took a 2-year process to find the right med. And in 2002, which was the year we moved here, we found the right medicine, and I've been on it since then.
What has God been teaching you this year?
Well, that's an interesting question. What he's taught me this year is that God is unexpected. I mean, there are things going on here in the life of our church that are unexpected.
Yeah.
That what you think God's going to do, he doesn't do. He does things that you just don't expect him to do. He is sovereignly in control. But when you think God's about to do X, he does Y. And sometimes his Y is a whole lot better than the X that you expected.
Right.
If you think you have God figured out that A plus B will always equal C, he will change the formula.
Yeah.
And I think that that's great.
Yeah.
That's the enjoyment about serving God.
Yeah.
Is you can't figure him out.
Yeah. And I think it's changed the way that we do church because, you know, one of the things that attracted me to Northwoods was your sense of strategy and planning. It's not over the past 2 years that we haven't had strategy. It's just that God sometimes throws a curveball and we have to adjust to whatever the curveball is.
Right. Well, I mean, last year we would have strategy and planning. That would all happen on Monday. And then Monday afternoon, the curveball would come.
Yeah.
I mean, so
literally that day.
Literally. So we would literally have a great plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
But God knew.
Yeah.
God knew. We would just need to adjust and then go from there.
The old Muhammad Ali saying, everybody's got a great plan till you get punched in the mouth.
That's right.
That's right. We'll close with a couple fun questions. What is the first concert you ever attended?
Cathedrals.
The cathedrals.
Cathedrals and the Tallies were in concert together at the Memorial Auditorium in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
In Chattanooga, Tennessee. Do you remember the songs they sang? And
oh, yeah. I mean, Canny Cootie Woody would be one. There's a ton of stuff that I could go off on. So, yeah, I'm a cathedral connoisseur.
It just shows how different our lives were. Mine was Jethro Tull.
Yeah, that's right.
What is the worst food ever?
The worst food to me would be any organ, like a liver. Any organ is just wrong. So people eat hearts, kidneys, those type of things, brains. No.
Yeah.
I don't eat organs. If it's an organ, I'm not eating it.
Even if you hunt a deer and you process it?
I've been in the field with a guy who killed a deer and ate the heart.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's just wrong. No, those things are wrong. No. I mean, that's just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's just wrong.
Who is someone that you miss?
Well, I miss being around my mom and dad more than what on that level. I miss Nathan Schroer. This goes back a long, long ways, but my mother's father, we called him Granddaddy Jim. I was probably closer to him on the grandparent scale than anyone else. I miss him. It is true that I recognize people who are new to our church probably get tired of hearing the name Nathan Schroer. I get that. There's a level for me that it doesn't change that I was close to Nathan.
Yeah. And you get close to those that you weep with and cry with and rejoice with.
That's right. I was close to Nathan, and I miss Nathan.
Yeah.
Nathan's one of those people who, if you would, will make heaven sweeter. So, I look forward to that kind of thing.
What is a profession you'd like to try if you weren't pastoring?
Being a sports announcer, being a broadcaster. I'd love to do that today.
What type of sport would you like to announce?
It wouldn't matter.
Anything.
This is where I will let my pride show. I feel like I could be a sports broadcaster for any sport. Just throw it out there.
Would you like to be loud and raucous, or would you, like golf is like, and the whisper goes over the crowd?
Yeah, I think that golf gets a bad rap because you have Gary McCord, who was not that way. Frank Nobilo, who's a lot of fun. Yeah, you get me going on this, and I'm going to start throwing you some Jethro Tull. Okay? So, honestly, I believe I could be a pretty good sports broadcaster, but I'm called into the ministry.
What do you do to relax?
To be honest, so there's a difference for me between relaxing and recharging. To relax, I go home, I hit the couch, and I turn TV on, and I veg. That's what I do to relax. To recharge, I enjoy playing a sport. Right now it's pickleball, but I enjoy playing a sport, whether that is against an opponent or against myself. And there's a difference to me between relaxing and recharging.
Yeah. Which has the better trophies, the preaching circuit or the pickleball circuit?
Actually, the preaching circuit has a better circuit. Pickleball's got these tiny little medals that I think they have gold, silver, bronze, but they're all just a piece of tin.
They got at the dollar store.
They're awful.
Yeah. Still winning. What type of music are you listening to right now that you enjoy?
So the Evidence song.
Yeah.
I can't get that out of my head. And so I really, really have enjoyed that our church has done. I mean, the moment that was played, Amy could tell you, just at our house, I've kept putting that on YouTube at night around our place. I listen to a lot of Zach Williams. I think I mentioned this to you guys yesterday. Y'all can do anything Zach Williams, and it's going to be good with me. And I know the Zach Williams Dolly Parton thing. We can't find Dolly Parton to come in and do that piece of There Was Jesus.
If you can sing like Dolly Parton, please contact Northwoods Church.
I mean, I'm just telling you, I really enjoy his type stuff. I probably have more of his stuff on my phone when I plug in and go on a trip than I do anything else. I listen to more podcasts, though, than I do music.
So last question, what is your favorite dessert?
I love sweets. My wife makes a Heath cake. The boys enjoy it as well, but we all have sort of a different topping on the Heath cake that makes it a little different. Garrett has it one way, Ryan has it another way, and I have it another. There's a Heath cake that I enjoy, but I love lots of desserts. Like I love both pies and I love cakes. I love pecan pie. I love apple pie. I love dessert.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to say that something's bad.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's a sweet, I'm generally thumbs up.
Yeah. Well, this has been the story of Bobby Pell. I'm glad you were able to share with us, and stay tuned for more stories from our church. See you next time.
See you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Northwoods Church Matters podcast. If you'd like to find out more about Northwoods Church, you can visit us at our website, www.northwoodschurch.org. Again, that's www.northwoodschurch.org.